Hello there, and welcome back to the Sky Guys podcast. We are now one quarter of the way through season two of Andor. We've covered the big events of four BBY in the first three episodes of season two. I'm your host, Mike Phillips. With me, as always, the man whose voice here in narration every single week. Pete Consadori is here. Pete, how are you?
Doing well. It's rough. They drop in three episodes at once for content creators where we're trying to watch it and get on the air. But yeah, we're quarter way through. Excited to talk about it. And Andor season two is finally here.
Finally here, and unfortunately, Nick Fraietta was here with us earlier today. We broke on celebration news. He got stuck in a Senate meeting on Coruscant, but we did get another Nick to fill in here. Recovery room Nick D'Alessio is here. Nick, how are you?
Sagrona Teema, Mike, Sagrona Teema, guy. Thanks for having me. Always happy to be on, especially when we're talking about Andor. So happy to be here.
So be clear, you're not gonna, kill the other Nick off screen like what happened with Take Hama.
I can't say, I can't confirm or deny anything. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
All right, so we'll leave that up in the air. So we should have the other Nick back next week. We got the Senate meeting. We'll see what happens here though. But Pete want to subscribe to us on the podcast. They can do so Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon, all usual suspects. Simply search for the Sky Guys for your podcast platform. For episodes there here, and we're in Andor season into our friends at the Just and the Suffering podcast who are getting this episode now. Not that one, but
Hello there.
hello there. We're not gonna be around too long. Make sure you subscribe. You want to get all of our stuff after this.
Yeah, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed to the new YouTube channel. We are officially on there full time. We have moved from the M. Phillips. Sorry, Mike,
Yep.
to take that away from you. But we're on the at Sky Guys podcast YouTube channel now full time. So if you want the video version of this, make sure you're subscribed to that new channel.
Yep, you go check us out on social media at Sky Guys Podcast, all your favorite social media platforms. And Nick, they can also email the podcast at skyguyspod@gmail.com. So if you have any feedback you want to leave on these episodes or any thoughts on Andor you want us to get in our ears, we will listen, like check all that stuff out before we get on the podcast.
Yeah, as I ask every time I'm on, and I'm gonna keep asking, has the other Gmail that mystery ever been solved yet?
It has not been solved yet.
Mm. Well, maybe one day.
Yep. And we already did an episode on celebrations week. We have another social media comment of the week we're going to pull up here. This is from our chat with Kyle Katarn last week about the Andor stuff here. And we have this comment from Varric Inc. about Diego Luna's acting skills. And Varric underscore Inc. says, the amazing thing about Andor is how unnecessary it felt after Rogue One, how essential it feels now. They crafted a Star Wars show with vision and something to say. And Pete, after watching this first arc, I think this comment stands up very well.
Oh yeah, very well. I mean this is I mean we'll get into it, but I agree. It stands up very well, and it'll be apparent when we review this first quarter of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll also throw that out here because anybody who missed it, we're not doing news because we did the news on Tuesday. Nick Fraietta and I did the celebration recap. We broke all the big stuff. We'll get the odds and ends next week. So since I didn't talk to either of you guys on Tuesday, any big thoughts on celebration you guys want to share? Anything that you're excited for that came out of it, surprised you? Pete, I'll go you first.
I mean, I was surprised about the mall show. I think we kind of called that one, where that was like the top show we wanted out of the Star Wars celebration, which was pretty cool. I was hoping it'd be a live action, but it seems like it's going to be the anime route, which I'm totally fine with. Maul animated is probably the most famous Maul when it comes to his personality and his character. So it'll be cool. That's the main thing that stood out. Everything else sounds status quo. Again, I'll believe it when I see it for most of the stuff that was announced. But the mall show looks pretty cool.
Nick, anything jump out at you from celebration?
Honestly, so I was actually at Coachella, so I'm so far behind in all my news and everything. I rushed just to watch Andor.
Yeah.
But of all like the headlines that I've seen, I think like the mall show definitely stands out to me also. I think if we're going to stay in this timeline that already exists, I mean, Maul's such a cool character. So anything fleshing him out more, I'm for it.
Yep. So you want more news on the celebration? We did a full 30-minute episode about that. It's out in the feed. It's on both YouTube channels. That was the last one to go on the Mike Phillips YouTube channel, but everything going forward is on the Sky Guys YouTube channels. Pete mentioned earlier.
Full time, full time on the new one.
All right. So let's get into this premiere here. So we have obviously, three episodes here of Andor we cover. Got the key events of 4 BBY. We got the wedding of Leah to Stecken Skulldun. We got Cassian stealing a TIE fighter prototype and landing on Yavin 4. We got the Ferrex gang hanging out on Mina Rao. We got all sorts of ISB stuff. We got Krennic. Like, what did you guys think about what we started here? So, Pete, general thoughts on and on the first arc of Andor.
The first arc was fantastic. I think it picks up nicely. I do have my concerns about the show after seeing how the first arc went. We'll get into it a little bit. I think the first arc started off strong, and I feel like the last episode was a little bit weaker than the first two. Not by much, but a little bit weaker, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, Nick, I think it's interesting because I felt like the middle one was kind of the weaker one in my opinion because it's sort of like the transition between the story. But I think we ended our main storylines pretty well here. And like obviously there's some controversial stuff coming out of episode 3, but like I thought like the tone of the show and what it had to say, I thought was very strong.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I think it started off good, then episode 2 was just kind of it was still good, but it was kind of the filler thing, and then 3 ended strong. I think I asked you, was it yesterday? I was like, because I hadn't watched it yet. I was like, does it leave off in a good spot where like the last one ended? And I think so. Yeah, I think it's more Andor. It feels like exactly what I wanted, so I'm happy with it so far.
Yeah, I think I'm a good. I mean, I think we're in a good spot with this show here, and I think like we have obviously 4 sort of primary storylines we follow through the arc here. We got obviously the ones I mentioned here, so I think instead of going beat by beat for 3 episodes, which we would spend like 2 hours just on that, and then we would have to do all of those things. I think kind of bounce around the storylines, any big storylines that stick out here. So I think we should start with Cassian because that's where the show begins here. So. Pete, any big like what's like obviously you have the big thing with the starfighter like theft, him ending up on the Avid 4, meeting this scattershot group of like quote unquote rebels that have no idea what they're doing. Like, what are your big takeaways from the Cassian stuff that we got in the first goes before he goes back to Mina Rao?
Very good. I think he portrays a story beyond the story we're seeing. We get that kind of unorganization, I guess is the word. It's not a good word to use. I don't even know it's the right word, but they're very unorganized.
Yeah.
The rebellion so far, it looks like it's the first stages of the rebellion. So you can kind of see that without Cassian blatantly saying it, which is good. But also too, they're making big moves, right? They infiltrate a base, imperial base, and steal what I'm assuming is an experimental TIE fighter,
Yep.
because it seems like it was the only one in the hangar, and there was a test pilot for it, so which was him. So the fact that he was able to do that, and they also make it realistic where he didn't know how to fly it, so the thing's bouncing off the walls, and he doesn't really know how to land it very smoothly. I think with that, and then the overall, just the hostage situation that he was in, and then the final parts, I think it wraps up that arc for him very nicely.
Yeah, Nick, I did enjoy seeing like the stuff. Like, first of all, we got a banger action sequence of him in the Star and the TIE Avenger, basically trying to get off this base, trying to figure out how to work it, like mowing down some stormtroopers, vaporizing the guy with the bazooka, and then getting off world, and then find himself a situation where like he's technically like a prisoner of this like very divided group of like they call themselves rebels. I have no idea he's also in the rebellion. So fun seeing him having the upper hand, even though like he should not have had the upper hand.
Yeah, and I think even before all that, he has that conversation with that girl that's helping him,
Yeah.
and his that kind of speech he gives her, it was very Luthen in my opinion. It felt like clearly he's been working with him for a year, and he's whatever Luthen's been rubbing off on him because that speech kind of felt like something Luthen would say, and I like that him messing up flying the ship, like it could have been played for a laugh, like as a joke, but it wasn't. It was funny when you see it happen. You're like, oh boy, here we go. But it added to the tension of it. It wasn't just like a punchline for a joke. Even with the rebels, like clearly they're so disorganized and fighting amongst each other. Like they could have been played off as a joke too, and instead you're just seeing the chaos that is the early stages of the rebellion. So I think, yeah, I liked all of Cassian's introduction because you see he's grown a little bit, um, but it's still not at where we are once Rogue One starts.
Yeah, I think Pete. I think the thing with the rebel group that we run into on Yavin 4, we find out it is Yavin 4 at the end when he escapes and flies the TIE Avenger off the ship. We see the temple at the end of episode 2. I think it's interesting here where you sort of see where like he's supposed to meet a contact there, and then apparently the contact has been killed, and he's very pissed off about that when he talks to Clay an episode later. But like, I think it's interesting to see that he sort of realizes like this group is sort of infighting each other. Like he realizes like I can't. First he's trying to reason. He's like, hey, like we're all working together here, and he's like, you know what, this is a lost cause. Like we can't do anything to help them, but like when going forward, we need to be more organized than these guys are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the untold story, right? I mean, they kind of touch upon it a little bit, but I mean, that part of the rebellion is I want to say the selfish part of the rebellion, right? They're kind of fending for themselves. They need food. They're trying to gain power for themselves. You know, at least that's how I took it with that group. I don't know how you guys did. While Andor was like, we're fighting for the same thing. Why are you going after me? And I think that was the, first of all, unorganized portion of it where, Andor has to like make a last minute decision as to what to do after being taken hostage. But also it shows the not so, um,
Savory.
team-oriented rebellion,
Yeah.
right? They're more for themselves and like they're fighting about who's the leader, and it's not it's like a small cell of people who are against the Empire but not really for the rebellion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I also loved how like Cassian figured out like once this group was sort of so like divided here, he's like kind of giving hints to like the group that has him is like, oh look, they're turning the ship around. Like they can have 5 meters by midnight. They could be trouble. They sort of like planting seeds like, to the gets to the point where there's just one guy left, and he takes advantage of some chaos, grabs a gun, and just basically turns the whole thing's advantage. Says I gotta get the hell out of Dodge and steals the ship back and leaves.
I also thought it was funny, just the group in general, because obviously they just have no idea what's going on. When they all meet up and they drop all the weapons and they're about to like, do something, I was like, oh man, are they gonna fight till submission or whatever? And then they're playing like space rock paper scissors. I'm like, no, obviously Cassian's gonna like get out of this. He's like way too smart to not. So it was interesting to see that dynamic.
Yeah, Pete, that got me cracking up. It was like this that we have this serious sort of civil war between these two rebels. We're settling it by rock paper scissors.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. Not my favorite part. I
I,
think it cheapens it a little bit. And I mean, like a minuscule amount, right? Like every show has to have a little bit of comedy in it, break up the tension. I'm not going to say that it wasn't, but it just, to me, I was just like, really? They're having this like standoff with guns and stuff, and all of a sudden they're like, we're going to come in and do rock, paper, scissors. It's just like, almost like it gives Andor the layup, right? Which maybe that was the case and that was the intention, to get him out of the situation, but it just seemed so like, all right, like this is how Andor finally is going to make it escape because these guys are going to play a childish game. So
well,
thought it cheapened the moment a little bit, a little bit.
well, they are a childish group of rebels. It makes sense they settle
For
it
sure.
rock
No,
paper.
for sure. You're right. It's on brand for them. I mean, I'm not going to say that it was a creative mistake. It works. I don't know. We're at the part of Andor where the rebellion's starting to take very very serious steps, and it's like we're gonna interject that in like the first arc, and it just was very like okay. But again, minuscule amount of cheapness, right? It's like just a little bit of like okay for me. Not
Yeah.
everyone's gonna feel that way.
I will also add here the sequences we got with the dogfight with the TIE fighter they stole. Incredible visuals on that. And like that shot beginning of episode 3 when he's in space and he's in front of the nebula with the thing, like so beautiful. And I've gotten used to Star Wars shows where they have, like they're in the volume and it's all fake background. Like you could tell the time and care they put into making this all look very good, whereas the practical sets or the shots like that.
Well, you would hope so with when you see that budget that was put into it, you would hope that it looks good. And I'm glad, like, yeah, it actually looks good. Because sometimes you're like, they spent how many millions of dollars and we're getting this? Like clearly this show has a lot of effort put into it, and it shows.
Yeah, I mean, Pete, this is a show that gave us the eye in season 1, that very beautiful, like stellar event in episode 6 of season 1. So, like, I'm not surprised they maintain a level of quality here.
I also think that you're dealing with a payroll going toward the actual show versus the actors. And I think some of the Disney plus Star Wars shows, the payroll's been going to the actors mostly than the actual show. I won't speculate on that, but you could probably take a guess at the big names that appear on shows and are main characters shows that are making a lot of money to reappear.
Yeah.
So I think this is a product of a huge budget, right? I think the biggest Disney Plus budget for a show
Yeah.
they've
Yep.
had,
Yeah. And
at
Gil, I
least in the
know.
Star Wars space. Sorry, Mike, and like they're using it toward like the show. I don't know the salaries of the actors and actresses, but I don't think it's going to be as high as, let's say, a Mandalorian show,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. I know Tony Gilroy's interviewed about this, like after the premiere, like he talked about a few things, and they brought the whole idea of, oh, like you're the biggest budget that Disney's ever had for Star Wars, and like I think it's like combined cost of $645 million over the 2 seasons. He's like, hey, look at it this way: he basically made 8 2-hour movies, and like look at our costs, how we break it down. We're more efficient than any other Disney property out there. So like, it's hard to argue with him at this point.
I wonder how do they I don't like obviously I don't know if we have an answer to this, but like how do they make money on this show? Is
Yeah.
it just is like to spend that much money, like there's no box office, you know what I mean? So how do they get a return on that? Is this the show that gets people to buy Disney Plus? Is that what they're hoping for? Does this, how does that work?
I'd say it's a combination of that and Pete. I'd also argue like it's got prestige points in terms of like, oh, like this is the good critical, like, like golden age of television Star Wars show, like where we get like get acting nominations out of it. So you got a best drama nomination out of this show and season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like investing in it, right? We're going to spend the money, and if we win a couple awards,
It's worth
people
it.
will come back to us and be like, "Look, we can make a good Star Wars show." And I think that Andor was and Ahsoka, because I loved Ahsoka, but I think Ahsoka more so for me was I understood what was going on, and that's why I loved it so much versus the layman, person or the casual Star Wars fan that maybe didn't watch Clone Wars, didn't really understand what was going on with Rebels.
Yeah,
But anyway, I think that they're investing in their future, and I think they're investing in winning some awards and getting people to sign up for that reoccurring revenue, right? To get Disney Plus. Now, I have a Disney Plus that doesn't have ads. I don't know if Disney Plus offers a version that has ads, but they probably also make the revenue through ads at
yeah,
some point. I
yeah.
can't see Disney not having an ad version. Just because the bundle I have, it's all like no ads, so I wouldn't, I wouldn't see them. But um, I'm sure ad revenue is also a huge thing, especially on an award-winning show. If you could put that tag on it, sponsors would pay a lot more money probably to be within that show.
Plus, also worth mentioning here that we're recording on Thursday night. The night before we recorded, ABC dropped the first episode of season 2 in its 10 p.m. primetime slot. So they got advertising money that way as a potential like audience draw. Say, hey, you want to see the rest of this arc? Go on to Disney Plus. So you might have drawn people in that way.
What a great episode to do it too.
Yeah,
I mean, that start was red hot.
that was a banger.
Yep.
And having Krennic there in episode 1, we'll get to him in a little bit, like a
Yep.
great draw to like. So say, oh, like I remember him from the movie. Like, let's go. I'm gonna see what he's up to. Uh,
100%.
Anything else on Cassie before we go to his friends on his Farrick's friends who have relocated themselves?
No, I think so far Cassian is kind of exactly where you would expect him to be. He's a year later, he's
You're
on this mission, he's able to improvise. Yeah, I think this is Cassian. This is the Cassian we know, so we'll see where he goes from here.
Yeah, it's interesting too because like you figure that the further along he gets in his character, like the more like skill we're see him getting as he gets further experience in these rebellion missions. Like this is just Cassie with 1 year under their belt. Imagine when we could see Cassie had 5 years under his belt in the end in the last arc.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So let's go ahead now. I think we'll go to the Ferrex gang on Mina Rao. We see basically that like Brasso, B2 Emo, Wilmon, whose name I finally learned in between seasons, and Bix are hanging out there. They're working with a farm, basically working as like laborers for a farmer named Kellen. Brasso has a girlfriend named Talia. Wilmon has a love interest. They're basically hiding out there. Cassie has been there, but he left to go steal the ship. While they're there, basically the Empire shows up to do a random audit, and they're looking basically for like quote unquote undocumented people. And Kellen basically tried to help them out, but they take too long to leave. He basically sells out the group to save his own skin. We get a lot of crazy stuff out of this here. But before we get to the headline grabbing thing here, any sort of thoughts on the dynamics we saw on this planet, Nick?
No, I think it was I like that like they were laying low and they kind of like built a life there. Not like a obviously they're not going to stay there permanently, but like they weren't just hiding out in fear. They were being useful. They were like, trying to at least help out the planet. Um, that whole gang, I Bix, man, she just like can't seem to ever catch a break. It just seems like all this terrible stuff keeps happening to Bix, and what starts off on with her nightmare, um, and we'll get into later on what happens. Um, but I like this whole dynamic of this group. They've kind of built like a family
Yeah.
kind of vibe, and it's not going to go so well, but as where we start in episode 1, you're like, okay, cool. They got this like community, they got this family vibe. They have like cookouts, they do all this stuff. Like, it's nice to see them trying to move forward.
Yeah, Pete, I thought this was like a nice idea for them to say, oh, hey, we have a new community. Like, we have this group we're in. We have, like, Brasso has a girlfriend. Like, Wilmot has a love interest that Bix is kind of pushing him towards in the game of the arc. But it gets ruined as Kellen, the landlord, basically says to them, like, this is the first time in a decade the Empire's been out here, and they happen to be doing a random audit. And then they shut communications as a Cassie can't really find out what's going on. And it sort of throws the whole thing into chaos.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about why they randomly go to that planet. I'm sure it's all connected. I like Nick was saying, I think the dynamic is great. I'm not totally convinced that Brasso's the name, right, with an R.
Yeah, Brasso, he's
Brasso.
he,
So
he's confirmed dead.
no, I that's confirmed for me too, but I'm not totally convinced that he actually was what's it called? Like outed by Kellen. I don't know if he was putting on a show to protect Kellen.
I think that's what the latter was because I think that's sort of the idea was that he was looking out for Kellen because he found
Right.
out Kellen was the one who basically had to tell him and says,
Right. And he understood, so he was like, I'm gonna act like I'm really mad at you so it doesn't look like we were working together. That's kind of how I took it, but I'm sure you can take it either way. And again, once we're done with these arcs and we're talking about the overarching arc, I have some thoughts about that too, how some things are really not answered and up for interpretation. But yeah, I think it's a great way to have them, right? Nick said laying low. I think it's perfect. They're working, they're just waiting. They seem like nervous, parents or nervous like friends, and it gives that vibe of like we're just anxiously waiting to see what the next step's going to be. I think it's a perfect way to do it.
yeah, and in the 2022, 2025 world we live in, very like polarizing, very like real world parallels to like the situation they're going through.
I, really quickly, have we ever seen something like this, like a visa check that you're not allowed on planet? Like, I feel like people have been just going between planets no problem forever in Star Wars, or
Yeah,
like settling down in planets no problem. And I can't remember, I could be wrong. I can't remember them actually saying like if you don't live in this planet, you can't be here without a visa or documentation or something. I've seen it to travel, like they couldn't travel off planet without some sort of identification, but I never like seen that.
but again, this is the Empire. Are we surprised they would have something a policy in place like this, make it easier to keep track of people?
Yeah. Also, to in most of like the Star Wars that we see, you're following like the Jedi, you're following like these powerful people. You're not really seeing like the on the ground everyday people, and I think that's where Andor has really been able to thrive. Like in Star Wars, you kill a stormtrooper and nobody bats an eye, but in Andor, he kills a guard and all of a sudden he's on the run. You know what I mean? So it's like I think you're seeing that for the first time now because for the first time we're really seeing what it looks like on the outer edges of the empire where they're really trying to put their foot down. So that's probably why we're seeing this now for the first time.
Yeah. Plus, you also have to remember too here, like as Nick said, we're either getting Jedi or like sort of like high level diplomats who like probably have the ability to go anywhere they want, or you're dealing with like the Han Solo smugglers who like are not going through legal channels to get where they need to go.
Right. No, it's a fair point. I didn't really even think of it that way. I just think I mean, I think it just raises, the point too of like we're seeing something we've never seen before in Star Wars. They're venturing out into new territory, at least with this, even though we're in the same timeline we've been in for a lot of the shows.
Yeah, that's true here. And we do have to obviously discuss the big thing that came out of this arc, which is like obviously like I think it made the pop culture landscape was the whole big sexual assault scene where like we see earlier in I think the second episode where like one of the Lieutenant Kroll who leads the Imperial Regiment out there like starts like hitting on Biggs like oh like like you want to go out to dinner or something like that like I would like get to know you and she uses the classic like line like when somebody else gets oh like my husband's off world. Like you can't talk about this. And then later on, Kroll comes back. At that point, Brasso's not there. Wilmon's not there. So he obviously tries to, take advantage of the situation here. And we get like a very unusual depiction of like sexual violence in Star Wars. We never like actually saw like sex in general or implied in the Star Wars universe. So like it's a very like shocking. It's getting polarized on the internet, but like I think Tony Gilroy and Adria Arjona both did interviews explaining why they felt like this made a lot of sense for the story purposes. And I think like they handle it very, very well in terms of like how they executed it. And even though like it is like shocking that it made it on Disney Plus, and Gilroy did say he got no pushback from execs in terms of putting it in the storyline.
Yeah, it's a very delicate thing to put into your show, especially Star Wars, especially Disney. And, you know, I think it's the way that they did it, it just emphasizes that like these aren't good people. It wasn't there for shock value. It wasn't there to be like, how edgy can we be? It was like, because up until that point, like the Empire's doing these like checkpoints and stuff, and you're like, yeah, that's annoying, but like, they're just doing their jobs. And then this scene happens, and you're like, oh no, these are horrible people that are put in charge. And it was tough to watch, I mean, I don't know if it happened with you guys. It when on Disney Plus, it gave me the option to skip the
It,
scene.
yeah, it did not give me that option.
Yeah, for some I was watching, and that scene, it gave me the option to skip ahead because I think they knew that like this might be triggering, yeah. And the acting was done, but the I can't remember the actress that plays Bix.
Yeah, Adria Arjona.
um Man, that's a tough role to take on, and she does it in such a nuanced way. um it was a powerful scene. It's hard, I don't think it was there for shock value. I think it was there to emphasize that like these are not good people, and this is why everything's unfolding the way it's unfolding.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of criticism on the internet from some corners. That's like this should not be my Disney Plus show. Like I know that they were definitely maybe they could have done a better job with the trigger warning and on the top of the episode and said, "Hey, there's content here might be disturbing some viewers." But like I think in terms of story purposes, I think it makes sense to include in the story here. And I think the perfect encapsulation of this is the follow-up scene where after she kills him, the other guy who's just chilling on his like speeder comes over and he's like, what happened here? He's dead. And she's like, he tried to rape me. He does not give a shit. He's like, okay, you're coming in for murdering him. So it's going to show you that these are like really terrible people who are put in these situations, just like with unchecked power, they're just kind of doing whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Nick said, I mean, this is a very delicate thing. I agree with you. I think they probably should have put a disclaimer in the beginning of the episode, just in case like children are watching this. This is still a very adult show, even though it's probably rated PG-13. I'm assuming. I don't think it's rated R or anything like that. So I think that they probably should have done something like that. They probably will add something later on, if, because like you said, it's very polarizing on the internet right now. And I also agree with Nick where it is 1000% to show how just brutally disgusting the Empire is.
Yes.
Not just bad people, just brutally disgusting, just to humanity and to the everyday Star Wars character, right? I don't think we ever see that. I think we see bad guy versus good guy, and they're heroes or villains, and you never really see the regular citizen. And I think that it's a very powerful part of the show because it really drives that point home that these people are disgusting. They are much worse than the villains we see in episode 4, in A New Hope, where it's like we're just the bad guys trying to, blow up planets. Like, yes, it's bad, but you don't it doesn't hit you as hard as something like this. So I totally think that this was put in for that specific reason, to make sure people see how bad they are and to really understand why the rebellion becomes so strong. I think this is going to be a trickle effect, and these stories is going to make the rebellion become strong. So it's like, we will not stand for this anymore.
Yeah, I will also throw a quote from Tony Gilroy, who was asked, who obviously did interviews about like the show and talked about this specifically. And he said here, I got one shot to tell everything that I know or can discover or that I've learned about revolution, about battles, as many incidents, as many colors I can get in there without having tip over. I mean, let's be honest, man. The history of civilization is a huge arterial component of it. That's rape. Also, here we are all the product of rape. I mean, armies in power throughout history have committed rape. So, not touch on it in some way. It was just organic. It felt right coming about as a power trip for this guy. Just trying to make a path for Bix that would ultimately lead to clarity, but a difficult path to get back to clarity with sort of like considering some of this allegories to like historical like fascism we've seen throughout this show. And we know that the empire itself is based on Nazi Germany. Like, it's not surprising that like Gilroy went there. So my one critique would be like, I think you need to put like something at the top of the episode that says like there's a trigger warning here for like people who have experienced like sexual violence in the past, or like, and at the end of the episode, I have some sort of like resource card saying if this bothers you, talk to somebody. Like, here's some number to contact. I did not catch something like that at the end of the episode. I think it was a mistake.
Yeah, I didn't either, and I think it deserved both. I think at the top and at the bottom of the episode at the
Yeah.
end.
Because I know I've seen on like broadcast shows, they will, if they have
Yep.
kind of stuff, they will put that like trigger warning, like especially with times like suicide, drug use,
Right.
you name it. They'll like put like, if you're experiencing a crisis or like this bothers you, here's a resource to contact. Like, the fact this is not on here, and all this is they got away, thought they gave it because of a streaming property. I think that's a mistake.
Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I maybe that ability to skip the scene was added after the fact.
Yeah.
But like I agree. It's, you know, it's I'm hoping like there's still time to do the right thing. So I don't think they need to apologize for putting this in their story. I think I agree with the sentiment that they could do better of like beforehand trigger warning, afterwards here's a number for help, a website, a thing to call, just if you experience anything like this or this triggers you, they can do a better job with that. And it's not too late. The episode just came out, so they might do something still.
Yeah, and I know like the controversial Star Wars account on Twitter basically is in jumping all over this, basically saying I don't want to see this in Star Wars. And the point where I think where they go wrong is basically saying like Vader we're not condone as the Empire we're not condone. I'm like, what property have you been watching? Would you not think that this would be something that the Empire is going to go nuts about? Like they don't care what they do as long as they get what they want.
I don't think anybody would condone it, but yeah, the point is that the empire, these people on these outer planets feel like they can kind of just do whatever they want.
Yeah,
And I mean, what's the planet again? The that you have to watch the infomercial on, that they're talking about, like that
Gorman,
Dedra's gonna.
Gorman.
Yeah, I mean, that whole council meeting, they're basically talking about like,
we're going to take over.
and not only are we going to take over it, like, do what you got to do. Let's get some propaganda. Let's make it so
Yeah.
it's we have to take it over. So like, they're ruthless.
We're gonna get there because like that whole meeting is very Nazi coded. That whole meeting, like there's a whole reference to like a summit that Hitler had prior to World War II before they discussing the ultimate solution. It ended up being the Holocaust, like very Holocausty vibes at that meeting. We'll get there, but so I want to wrap up this sort of situation here where the whole thing ends up being that like Wilmon gets back, Brasso, Cassian shows up at the last minute, tries to like mows down a bunch of stormtroopers with this TIE fighter. He gets to Bix and Wilmon on time, but Brasso is dead, and B2 Emo gets left behind on the planet. He gets left in the care of Talia here. So, like, I think a big transition point here is how this situation ends, where, like, we get a big character death in the premiere with Brasso, and we get, like, B2 Emo is sort of our fun, go lucky, like, little, like, puppy dog droid left behind. And I would not be shocked we never see this droid again. I think it might be he's here, and, like, he gets left out of this because now we're getting to more serious times.
Yeah, to be honest, I forgot B2 Emo was like, when they got off and flew away, I kind of forgot that he wasn't with them. It kind of felt like he was just there as just like,
The puppy dog.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, Pete, like, what did you think about like how we move the Ferrex crew forward here? Because now, like I said, like Brasso's gone,
Yeah.
B2 all goes gone. Like this now, it's really like Wilmot's probably still involved in capacity, but Bix and like Cassie are gonna be deeper in the rebellion now than they were.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the way that they end it is I won't use the word cookie cutter, but I feel like I've seen stuff like this before where like one of the main guys die, he's not come with us, we got to leave him, and then the person's like no, and you drag him into the ship and you go, right? Like it's definitely something we've seen before, but that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't work. I think it works well. I think it adds a powerful moment, and I think it's a good way to wrap up what the Ferrex crew is doing.
Yeah. I think the loss of B2 emo though, I think is a big like driver for the story here too, because I feel
Well,
like he was sort of like okay, he was a character like so attached to Cassie, and it's like you can't come like you can't go where I need to go.
let me tell you something though. Like, I'm with Nick. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah,
I
they
like I agree with you when it comes to if you're gonna really not say nitpick, but if you're gonna overanalyze what overall analyze the whole Cassian character in B2 Emo, like as the viewer, I didn't even consider that B2 Emo was left. You know, like it's something that you wouldn't even think of moving through the show. And if you've never reminded me of it, I would be like, oh, I wonder what happened to B2 Emo. You know, that's really detrimental to Cassian. Like it wouldn't have mattered. So to me, that character, as much as it's a great character, it's a cool droid, it's like it doesn't really I don't want to say matter, but it kind of doesn't really matter if he's there or not.
yeah, I mean like he does not fit the tone where the story is going. It just makes sense he gets left behind.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying. Like it's not like it's, you know, C3PO or R2D2 where they're like I'm going to call them iconic droids, right? Where they're always there, they're always helping, they're always a part. BTMO has just been kind of there for like you said, like almost like the puppy dog, right? So this is a much more serious show and like the theming and the content like I didn't even realize he wasn't there until you guys talked about it.
Yeah, and Nick, like this will be the episode. We'll remember. Oh, like remember Brasso died? Not. Oh, remember they forgot B2 emo and they left him with Talia.
Yeah, and the Brasso death, that one, sometimes when like the not major characters go, you kind of don't feel much about it. But I was upset about Brasso. I was like, oh man, this is like Cassian's like
Best friend
yeah, and you see Cassian feel it. It's he doesn't have enough time to fully embrace it, so he kind of just
has to
does
run.
what he has to run, and that interaction with Bix. This is how good the acting is. That interaction when Bix is like, "What about Brasso?" and Cassian, he just gives her kind of like a look, and she understands what that means, and it's so sad. You feel it, and I think the acting in this so far has been great.
Yeah, and Pete, it's a credit to this show where like Brasso, we see him in season one. He does not get a ton of screen time, but we as the audience got attached to him, especially like he has the viral moment where he uses Marva's brick to fight a stormtrooper in the season in the Rick's Road riot, and now he like we're very devastated he's dead.
Yeah, I mean they're taking a play out of the Game of Thrones book, and I won't ruin it for people who haven't watched it, but you know it's always a shock when a big character, I'm not gonna say main, but a big character, you know, within a first arc just goes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I also before we move on here, I will also give a shout out to the fact that like I love that the Ferrex gang had a picture of Marva Andor in their little camper. That was great.
Yeah,
Bunch of Easter
a
eggs.
nice little touch. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Where do you guys want to go next? The Mon Mothma wedding or the ISB stuff?
Let's go Mon Mothma. I have some thoughts.
Yeah, we have some thoughts on the Mon Mothma here. Nick, general thoughts on the whole wedding stuff. I think it's pretty cool. We got to see like the cultural outlook on Chandrilla. Like the customs were kind of cool where they had the parents kind of do the walk on the grass around the kids who are getting married, and you had the wedding gift, you have the cutting of the braids or like the Padawan thing. Like it was cool to see like the how ornate they made all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get to see like a different culture, I think it's cool, especially when it's fleshed out. And this didn't feel like a afterthought. This felt like something real, something that mattered. My thoughts on Mon Mothma in general, I was like, I don't want to say I was disappointed. I'll say that like I thought like a year later she would have been way more like into it, and I think she still hasn't gotten there yet. I think we're still building up to her leading to the Mon Mothma that's like all in, and I mean we'll get into the events that take place during the wedding. But yeah, overall, I think the whole wedding sequence was fun. I kind of like that song that they're all dancing to at the end when they're like flailing their arms around and going crazy. I felt like I was back at Coachella, you know? I was like, this is cool.
Yeah, it was an EDM mix of a song from season one. They actually called it Niamos after Space Miami.
Oh, did they really?
Yep.
That's probably why I liked it because I like Space Miami. Yeah.
Yeah, Pete, I will say Mon Mothma, like in this arc, really goes through it. Because, I mean, you have obviously Perrin accusing her of cheating on him with Tay Kalma. Tay Kalma's basically blackmailing her, trying to get more money and guilt tripping her, saying, I've lost a lot of business since I started helping you out. She tries to give her daughter the out, and the daughter basically gives her like a very harsh, like, I wish you were drunk and not trying to sway me out of my marriage situation here. And then she has to basically let Luthen like kill off like her childhood best friend. So like she really has a really hard like road to reality here in terms of her active involvement in the rebellion.
Um, I, Unfortunately, I think Mon Mothma and the arc in episode 3 was real weak.
Yeah.
Real weak. I think that the first 2 episodes were strong. I like how, and we probably should explain this too, just so people understand. Throughout the entire, what's it called? Throughout the 3 episodes, the first arc, you go through the 3 main storylines concurrently, or as it's happening together. So you have the Andor, the Ferrex crew, and then you have the Chandrillan stuff
Going
happening at
on.
the same time.
Correct.
So you get parts of everything at all episodes, which I like. The problem is that you see all this turmoil in episodes 1 and 2, and episode 3 is just like her dancing the whole episode, except for maybe the first part when it's the ceremony. And it's like you see this like, and it's powerful, a painful like a Mon Mothma that's in pain but trying to like act like she's having a great time, while like the things are happening on Gorman, and in theory I don't think she knows her friend's gonna go and get killed
I'm,
by Luthen
I,
because
I,
Luthen's trying to.
she's fully aware, according to like Jamie Wright did an interview about this.
Right, but here's my issue, and we'll get to it now. They can't keep doing this. This is gonna be a problem with the whole series. Like I shouldn't have to read articles and interviews from the director to figure out the intentions or what people know or don't know. Especially when we have a show that's gonna jump every year in arc, right? I mean, we had that criticism with Acolyte where we had to talk with the director to figure out what was going on with the Acolyte. We had the same criticism saying we shouldn't have to have that.
Yeah.
So this is the only thing I'm concerned about this show, where I'm okay with there being some mystery, but I don't like that they have to come out every arc now and explain what's going on, because let's call it what it is. It's going to be rushed then, in that opinion, if they have so much to talk about, but they're not actually giving you the information you need. So that's my one criticism about the show so far. I don't know if other arcs are going to be a little bit more fleshed out and you don't have to worry about that because they're just trying to set up the whole season in these 3. So they kind of have to kind of guide you a little bit. But I am not a fan of having to assume what happens to people unless they talk about it later in the season, like, oh, when last year when Tay died, or or whatever, and they can kind of do that stuff. But I digress from that point. My point is that you don't really know what's going on in Mon Mothma, and I think that's a strong part. But I also think it's a weak part that for more than half the episode, all we see is her dancing around. We
Yeah,
could have used that for other things, for Luthen maybe making the plan to have him killed or whatever. Like you could have used all of that elsewhere, and I feel like that's like the only criticism I have of the first arc was that part, because they use so much on just her dancing in pain while things are going on in other places where they could have had more political talk, more back and forth with Luthen. They could have used so much more there, and they didn't.
I think my interpretation of it, though, I'm sorry to cut you off, Nick, but it's like I know, like Jamie O'Reilly said that this is sort of like she called it chaos dancing, where like she's dancing because she doesn't want to scream and sort of like getting her emotions out that way. Where I look at this is sort of like the come to Jesus moment, where like before, like she and Tay Kama are sort of doing this thing, like, oh, this is a foundation. Like I gotta talk to you about the foundation. Like we find a way to compensate you for your losses for the business, and like fact that like I can try and put in a good word with your wife, but like this is sort of like her realizing at the end, especially after the conversation with Luthen, where he's like, there's no numbers to be big enough for him. He's to come back for more. Like, we have to deal with this problem here. So her sort of like realizing, oh, I can't just do this. That following up by her giving her daughter potential out and her daughter basically throwing it back in her face and spitting in her face. I think that's where her company is like, oh, like this is like I have to be more involved here, and like I'm going to pay a price for my involvement here. I think that's sort of the way I looked at it.
Well, so my take on this whole dancing thing, I think so when she's talking to her daughter, she's like, my mother was drunk at this point, and I think I'm starting to realize why.
Yeah.
And then she tells her daughter like, you have an out, you don't have to go through this, and her daughter's like, no, screw you, I'm doing this. And then she goes up to Luthen and is like, I'm gonna find a number, I'm gonna get this resolved. And Luthen's like, that's cute, you think that that's gonna go this way. And I think she's seeing all these things. She no longer has a control on anything, she no longer has grasp on anything. And it's like she realized this is why my mother was drunk, because she realized that like she can't do anything about this. So in that moment she takes a shot, takes another drink, and I think that's her just being like,
I'm coping.
I can't do anything about this, so you know what? Screw it. And that was kind of my take on the whole thing.
In the other words, I know this. We're usually not a swearing podcast. This is like the fuck it moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, I agree wholeheartedly. I think you guys are spot on when it comes to what Mon Mothma's feeling. You don't have to waste 20 minutes back and forth of her dancing. You could do this within one cutscene back.
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say. I think they could have used a lot more
Real estate.
of the Luthen in the back and forth. I would have rather that back and forth to the final end point where you go to the dancing for one cutscene and she's realizing it, and then it's still powerful, right? I still think it's as powerful. I don't think you need to cut back 4 times to her dancing in a circle.
I think that's the visual more than I think they love the visual.
I get it. You could have done it in I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Cut it in half and do 2 cutbacks to it, and use 1 or 2 for like more Luthen and Mon Mothma back and forth, or more political stuff or whatever. I just think I agree with you. I understand the visuals. I understand the creativity of it. I just really would have personally. I would have really loved more of the substance of what Mon Mothma's trying to accomplish versus her giving up for 4 cutscenes just dancing around drunk. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So agree, disagree. I think it's tough given like the venue
Sure.
and like situation. I can understand why they chose they
Sure.
did. I know in terms of the post show interviews, I think it's nice to sort of look into like the insight of like, okay, here's what the actors thinking when they're portraying the scenes. Very helpful with the Adria Arjona stuff for Bix, helpful with Gilroy's intention for some of this stuff. Like I think they gave you enough in the show that you could easily figure out on your own, like, okay, Tay Kama got killed on this scene. Like if like they confirmed it afterwards, without maybe those who didn't pick up on it, but like I think they gave you enough breadcrumbs to lead you in the direct path you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, the only thing I would say is I think that I know Acolyte, it's comparing apples to oranges. I know, but if we're gonna have that criticism with Acolyte, we should have that criticism with Andor.
Yeah.
I think that's all I'm saying. Andor is by far leagues above what Acolyte was, and I think that we were a little bit more upset with Acolyte because like, why don't you just show us the damn thing? And I think that Andor, you're getting all the context clues. I just personally, I think if we're gonna criticize one, we have to put it in the same playing field and criticize the other for the same um actions by the director or whatnot.
Yeah. Let's go to the Tay Kama stuff in here a minute. 'Cause I think this is sort of the runner throughout all this because we know in season 1 that he's Mon Mothma's childhood friend. Like he says, I'm going to help you funnel your foundation. They end up, he's the one who sets her up with Davo Skoldun. We see it ends up resulting in a wedding. He comes over, he says, like, my life sucks now. I've lost a lot of business. I've lost a lot of credits. My wife left me. Perrin's making jokes to Mama about, oh, like, you cheating on me with him? Like, I know you guys go back a ways. And then he basically keeps hanging over her head in terms of like, oh, like, I want to be compensated. Like, I need a number. We'll talk about this later. He's like basically doing a very terrible job here and like sort of trying to like get more money out of this. And like, I think he fails to realize here. And like, this is a credit to Luthen being there because he brings the gift that Davo has. That's why he's at the wedding. Like, Luthen clocks me like, this guy's a problem. Like like there's no number we can give this guy where he's gonna keep his mouth shut and like he's a liability and like he's more grounded in the realistic reason being the rebellion where he's like, okay, like he served his purpose. He knows too much. He's not gonna play ball. We have to get rid of him before he blows up our spot. So Nick, thoughts on Tay Kama's predicament?
Yeah. I think he says something too where he's like, it's ironic that, it's the rebellion that's actually making me go bankrupt when
Yeah.
it's so he's playing with fire. And you for most of the first three episodes, you're seeing like the shop Luthen, you're seeing like happy, like happy go lucky Luthen. And then that's the moment where it turns and he goes to Mon Mothman. I think, yeah, what does she say? She's like, I'll find a number. And he's like, it's funny that you think this is gonna go that way. He said something along those lines,
And he's like, that's cute.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, if you think this is gonna happen, you're not. And that's now we're seeing the other side of the rebellion where it's like, yeah, they're the good guys. They just killed an innocent man. You know what I mean? So like, there's no, but like, obviously it's good versus evil, but in both there's room for nuance, and I think that's what this whole Takama situation kind of shows.
Yeah, Pete, what do you think about like Tay's little story arc here through the three episodes that ends in his death?
I think it's important. I think it adds that conflict to Mon Mothma, on top of the whole wedding situation. And I think that he plays it beautifully, and I think that it's important. You know, I don't think that this arc gets such a high score for me, as we'll a little spoiler. If we don't have this conflict and this inner battle that Mon's having, plus this like kind of like, hey, like you gotta help me here. You ruined my life, and it just makes it a lot more credible, right? It just makes it a lot better. And also too, this is like a year after Andor season one.
Yeah,
Why is she just telling her daughter now there's a way out
I think at that point
the
she
day
feels
of the
guilty.
wedding?
She feels guilty at that point.
I mean, maybe, yeah. I mean, that's 100%. But it's like, geez, you had like a whole year to be like, "Are you sure you want this?" Like, but but anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
I thought his part was good. I think his character is needed, and I think it's crucial to this arc.
yeah. One last note I'll add here before we move on from this one is that like Vel's there. Vel's sort of sympathizing with Mom Mop as one of the few who does not want to be the tradition there. We find out basically that she and Cinta have not seen each other basically since the end of season one, and we see that reunion at the end of season at the end of this series. Like I know where Cinta is. Like she could contact if she wanted to, and then that look, Nick, at the end where like Cinta shows up to put the head out and take Alma, and like they see each other. Like that's gonna be something that pays off at some point.
Yeah. Like, are they not okay, or there's more to it? I mean, there's more to it, right? And that's the whole thing. Clearly, Cinta's been up to some stuff. She's been doing some probably not great things, so
Yeah.
maybe she doesn't want her to know, or maybe it's more complicated than that. But that was a fun little clocking moment of like, ooh, this is gonna go somewhere. I'm curious where that goes.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting moment here. So I think last story I'll get to before we get to all our trackers and stuff. The ISB, which is the Krennic's like Nazi summit and the Dedra stuff. So I think honestly, very cool to get Krennic back. We get this meeting, the secret meeting on like they call. I'm gonna check on my notes here. It's why they call it the Maltine Divide. There's a lot of visual parallels to like the big Nazi summit in World War II. It sets up the Holocaust and Krennic basically says, we have a secret mission. There's no record of this. Nobody leaves this room with the information that we need to get this mineral called calcite to help like basically fuel reactors for the Death Star. Without saying it as much more details, like they display a promo. It was like, we need a solution to allow us to go in this planet and sort of, take what we want without by any means necessary. And then we see all this stuff. Dedra's there, Partagrass is there. We hear the bit of the two random guys. Oh, we can just plant propaganda. And then we see Krennic probably go to Dedra. I put you here. You have an idea what to do. Like, what's the answer? And she says, you plant rebels there that you can trust to cause chaos, allow you to go in and stampede everything and take over what you want. So I thought a very interesting summit there, Nick, to get the return of Krennic and basically get these very real world Nazi parallel with what the Empire's up to.
Yeah, I mean, they're laying it on pretty thick.
Yeah,
Like, they're like, oh, these people, they think they're so high and mighty, like we should take them down a peg. And then yeah, I think this is a good introduction to Dedra. Um I she and that whole interaction with her and Krennic, yeah, Krennic's like, you're not very good at, you think you're good at hiding your feelings, but you're not. So tell me what you're thinking. And Dedra's like, well, this is how we go in. And uh it's like they're very much there's no need to invade that place. They're looking for reasons to do it, and they're going to make reasons to do it. And that's like a horrifying thought that they're doing that.
Yeah, Pete, what do you think about this summit what Krennic has put together here and like this mission that we're gonna go take what we need from Gorman and find any needs necessary?
Yeah, I think it's also very strong. I think Krennic. I don't remember how he was in Rogue One, and I don't want to be insulting to the fan base or the movies, but I don't remember him being so calculated.
Yeah,
I feel like he was just more of an authority figure,
yeah.
if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong. It's been a while since my last rewatch of Rogue One, and sometimes there's just so much information in Star Wars stuff. It's hard to hold on to all of it. But this kind of shows he has that authoritative power, but he also is calculated. He knows who to go to. He knows who to talk to and where to get his ideas, and it's showing his character in a little more successful light. And the reason why I say successful is because it'll be successful for the Empire versus just being this figurehead that we see in Rogue One. Again, I apologize if I'm not getting his character completely right, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting here, Nick, with this meeting that like the last time we see Krennic before this, not counting Rogue One, is like in Bad Batch. He's there and he has a meeting. He's at a big briefing, I think like in the first year after the Empire with Tarkin that's leading the briefing, a bunch of people, and then this time around, like Tarkin's not there, the Emperor's not there. Like this point, Cranks, I think is going for the power grab and saying like I'm doing my own thing. I want like you guys here, like we will tell Tarkin when he needs to know, not like before that. So I think it is that he's sort of making his own power play here.
Yeah, I mean, he even references Tarkin and a few other people. I don't remember everybody he references.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you kind of get the sense that, Krennic has he knows that getting this done will benefit him and the Empire in general, but like this is probably most likely a power play for him.
Yeah, it is. And I'd say note with the Dedra front, because it sort of carries the rest of what we got to cover here, is like we get that conversation with Dedra and Partagrass on Coruscant, Pete, where like she basically says, I want no part of this Gorman thing. Like, I do not want to do is like I'm fine just being an administrator. And Partagrass like, this is your time to shine, kid. You came up with the idea, like you're gonna be the one who executes this. So we get very strong into that Dedra's gonna be involved in the Gorman massacre to a big degree.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things that he says to her is like, "You're here. You don't have a choice. You're doing this."
Yeah, it's
It, it
like
was it wasn't more so like, "Look, this is your big shot." There was that kind of undertone too, and he was trying to like sell it that way. But like, if I'm remembering correctly, he's like, "You were in that room. You're in this."
yeah, it's like you can't back out of this.
Right, like you don't understand. Like this is not something you can choose to be in versus not. So, I think that was like the main thing I took away from that interaction was if the Empire wants you to do something, even if it's their own kind, you're going to do it.
Yeah. That's for sure here. And I do want to end the plot discussion with the dynamic between her and Karn. And Nick, I love the Karn update where like we go to the Bureau of Standards and he's there and he's like giving the new employee a tour. He's like, like just a year ago, I was in your place and I did an off the books investigation. I uncovered embezzlement and now I'm the supervisor. So like Karn's living his best life right now.
I gotta tell you, the second I saw Karn on screen, I was just like, yeah, our boy's back. I love Karn. I love that character. I love where his just everything about him. I'm a huge Karn fan, and I love their dynamic. In the last season, there was kind of like there was like a little bit of tension that you can kind of feel, but you weren't sure where it was gonna go. And that whole dinner sequence with Karn's mother,
That was so fun.
they're getting ready, and I'm like, who's gonna walk in? Like, who from the Empire is gonna walk in? And I see Karn's mother, and I was just like, oh man, here we go.
This is fun.
This is what I was waiting for. Forget the rebellion. I wanted to see this whole scene, and it did not disappoint. I loved every second of it.
Yeah, so Pete, like, were we surprised when you see that Karn and Dedra are living together at this point and that they become a couple of some sort?
Yes, I think that I thought there was going to be this like tension and they're going to finally either wind up with each other or not. It's just like, no, boom, a year later they're together.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I'm curious to see how that plays out throughout the arc. I mean, it gets that part out of the way, so now you have so much more you could do with it. I'm okay with it. Again, we have this year that we don't really know what happened, right? It's 5 BBY. Or BBY 5 because they're doing it that way. I thought it was the other way, but it's BBY 5 in the end of Andor season 1, and now we're at BBY 4. So a lot could have happened, right? So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, this dinner party was such a highlight of the episode for me, of the third episode, is that we see Edie shows up, Captain Hunter's back, which is a lot of fun watching her play Edie, and then they had this dinner. It's just like so it's like some sort of like fondue kind of thing, and then like Edie's like just sort of like dropping hints about like dead about like his backstory, like oh like Karn like when like his dad ran away, but so he's very close to me. I'm glad you're gonna sort of make a man out of him, and like this dresses Karn out so much to the point that we get that hilarious shot of him just like face down in the bed, like in the other room when Dedra basically puts Ed eating your place. I did love this scene where Dedra's like, like you're gonna stop talking about his uncle because his uncle's a criminal. You should not be bringing that stuff up in public in Coruscant, and like you're gonna see him like every once in a while because I'm going to like make sure he sees you, but like I'm his influence his life now, not you. I thought that was a very fun dynamic. See, like he sort of had to back off.
Yeah, maybe I just really like strong type A women, but I that scene happened where she's like telling her brother off, and I was like, I should call her, you know? I'm like, oh boy, this is doing something for me. And it's just so funny. Like the way that she is just so like stern, strict, and to the point works perfectly with the way Karn is like just an anxious mess of a human being. Like his mother being there, he had to lay down in bed. Like it's just I love that whole dynamic. I think it's great.
Yeah, and P, I did also love that like this comes after Edie's basically trying to tell Dedra like, oh, you can teach him some manners. Like you seem to have an idea what you're doing. And then like she's like, no, like I you're not in charge of him anymore. You're a bad influence on him. He's anxious because of you. So I did think it was fun to see that play out and sort of like see the shifting dynamic around in the women in Karn's life.
Yeah, and I mean, Dedra seems nervous too. And the fact it's like almost like after they get through the whole dinner, she's like, "All right, I've had enough," and she just kind of flips the switch, and is like, "No, I'm the one that speaks for him now, not you," and just takes full control. Is like, you're in my house. I'm sick of your shit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it was a cool dynamic to see, and it just keeps putting Karn in the same position where he's just kind of there, going like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it," just very like still very Karn. Like his character hasn't changed. He just has a little bit more confidence now in his job because he got promoted, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I did that's the shot of the episode for me with him, which is like him face down in the bed while Dedra and Edie are arguing in the next room. That was so funny.
Yeah. I mean, we're all a little Karn, so we've all been there. We all know what that feels like. And he's a little bit more dramatic than maybe some of us are, but we're all Karn and we could all use a good Dedra in our lives.
Yeah, so I think that's it on the episode stuff. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we get to all our trackers and stuff?
no,
All right, so we have a lot of stuff to cover here because this is the premiere arc, so we're gonna cover all of our trackers here and stuff. So we will start out with the character draft, where the appearance of one Orson Krennic in the premiere actually got some action here. So I'm on the board now. My first point for Krennic. So I have one. My team is Bail Organa, C-3PO, Krennic, and Bodhi Rook. Nick has Sheev, Palpatine, General Draven, Ahsoka, and the mentioned Tarkin, but not seen Tarkin or Palpatine. Pete has Jyn Erso, Harrison Dula, Agent Gallus, and Galen Erso. So, Nick, like this is gonna be an interesting season here because you got one out of Krennic so far. We know he's gonna show up again, but see, some of these other ones could show up.
Yeah. I mean, knowing your guys' luck with the drafts, though, there's a chance that that's the only one. It
wait a
seems
minute.
like
I'm confused. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Nick. Didn't we know Krennic was going to be in the show season 2? Like we allowed for you to keep that?
We had this whole debate during the preview show where he said we're gonna add one character because Nick's like you should get credit for having Krennic, but like I'm not gonna like do.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
We had
Shit, man.
we had a whole debate on this.
Another show I'm gonna lose. This is great. I love it.
All right, so that's one we're keeping an eye on here every week. Another one that I don't know if you remember this, Pete. You remember the Death Draft?
No, I don't remember the death trap.
During the preview show, we did a draft of each of two characters that we thought would die. There's no stakes on it, but we did have a hit immediately because I said Brasso was a die.
oh, look at that. 2 for 2 on your draft so far, Mike.
Yeah, so I have Cinta. So if my tracker is
Oh, I do remember this. I remember picking the guy who was torturing Bix.
his name is Dr. Gorst.
Yeah. I do remember this now.
Oh man, Pete, I hope you're wrong. If Cyril goes, I might stop watching the show.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's going to be like one of those things at the end where he's like, "I'm for the rebellion," and someone's just going to murk him.
All right, so that's the death draft. So the other options here, Nick took Luthen and Bix. Pete has Cyril and Dr. Gorse. I have Cinta as the other option. So Brasso bit the dust. Now we'll go to our trackers. We mentioned the ones we do every single week on the show, and we had a lot of action on the tracker front here. So we'll start out. Pete, we bring the Hondo tracker along. He did not show up yet, but we have 19 overall Hondos counting his appearance in Force of Destiny
We're going to get him.
in this
Don't
show.
know when. Don't know when. But we're
All
going
right.
to get him, and it's going to be a joyous day.
Yep. All right, Nick, we had two anime cameos in season one, both from Saw Gerrera. We're still waiting for season two to hit this tracker, but let me remind the audience here.
Wait, sorry, say that again. It cut out.
We had two anime cameos in season one. They're both from Saw Gerrera, so we're gonna keep an eye on this as well. See if we get more in season two.
Oh yeah, I feel like there's got to be at least one or two. It would make sense for the timing wise of where everything's taking place.
Saw will trip it himself whenever he shows up again. So
Yeah.
next up, Pete, live action cameos. He picked up another one with the return of Krennic, so 10 in 2 seasons so far, 13 episodes.
Not bad. I'll take it.
All right. Next up here, Nick, we got the planet tracker. We ended season one with 9 planets. We added 5 more in the first arc here. We went to Sinar, which is the planet where they stole the TIE fighter from, Chandrilla, Mino Rao, Yavin 4, and the Malfteen Divide. So 14 overall planets in 13 episodes of Andor and 15 episodes of Andor.
We might get even more too, because if it's gonna keep jumping and there's gonna be like different missions you might be cutting into, like we might get a whole lot more.
Yeah. Pete, we made a ruling earlier, like off the air. I'm bringing it on the air for we got our first ever classic line when Krennic references unlimited power in his speech in terms of Palpatine. So one classic line, the first one in our tracking.
Yeah, one classic line. It's an Imperial line. I'll just say it that way. It's probably something that the Emperor uses on a daily when, motivating his troops. So yeah, no, I think we keep it as a classic line.
Yep. Nick, do you remember the Andor kill count from season one?
I don't know. What was it?
We keep track of all the people Cassian kills. He killed 11 people in season one. It jumped all the way to 39 after the first arc of this season.
30. Oh, right. Yeah. I'm like, who did he kill? Forgetting the entire first sequence was him mowing down stormtroopers. Yeah.
So to recap, he kills 7 stormtroopers in the hangar, 6 on there, and the one got the bazooka. Kills 2 pilots getting away from there. He kills the rebel in the ship in second episode.
Right.
And the third, he blows up the tank with 10 Imperials in it, and he kills 8 more following Brasso. So he's back on the body count.
He's trying to catch Chopper at this rate,
Yeah. I'm glad you brought Chopper up because Pete asked me to keep an eye on that one in case Chopper's up. His kill count's at 50,021.
And counting.
And counting. We know that might be one with Ahsoka too, but it's gonna if he Chopper murders anyway, we'll bring it up here. And the last one is the death tracker, where we're tracking the deaths of named characters. We got 3 on the board, Pete. We got Brasso, we got Tay Kalma, and we got Lieutenant Kroll. So 3.
We're considering the lieutenant a main character?
Named.
Oh, named. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because we as distinguished, we're not gonna like list all the random stormtroopers Cassian mows down. If a character gets a name, they're killed. We'll list them.
Sure. Yeah, no, that I understand. I thought you said main for some reason, so my apologies.
All right, so that's it. So on the tracker front here. So now we're gonna go to the MVP board here. So in terms of we'll reference the season 1 board. You're not gonna go through the whole thing for the purpose of time, but where we left off here, this is where season 1 was. Our MVPs, our top 3 were Cassian at +9, Luthen at +4, and Mon Mothma at +4. The bottom 3, a tie for the top third worst was with Tim with 2 M's and Perrin, Blevin, and then Bureau of Standards employee Karn was -12 at the bottom here. So we're going to hide this board going forward. We're going to show you the full results at the end of the season. We're going to do a separate season 2 board. We'll keep track of that going forward here. So we're going to, since this is 3 episodes each week, we're going to do 3 MVPs and 3 LVPs each. So I'll start out here and give 1 MVP to Cassian for his actions, obviously. I'm going to give 1 to Dedra for telling off Edie and setting up like the plan for Gorman and getting approval from Krennic. And I'm going to give 1 to Bix for killing Lieutenant Kroll. So, Pete, where do you want to go with your MVPs?
I'm gonna give one to Cassian because I think he just does a great job throughout the whole 3 episodes. I'm gonna give one to Luthen because I think that Luthen really drives that Mon Mothma storyline a lot. I think without him being there and the things that he's doing along with Tay, but I think more Luthen, I think it just adds more drama and more tension to that whole thing. And then the other one I want to give it to is the Empire Engineers because that TIE fighter is balling.
I
I
see.
love that TIE fighter. I think it's sick, and it looks like it like really works like really good. And I think there's something special about this TIE fighter in canon, right? Am I not mistaken?
Yeah. Yes. TIE Advance. The
TIE
yeah.
Advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never heard of it. But anyway, it looks cool. It looks like it runs like a dream. So we'll give it to the mechanics or the engineers or whatever you want to call it.
I'm gonna have label something like the Imperial Engineering Department might get the.
There you go. That works.
All
All
right.
right.
So Nick Fraietta sent his in here. He gave one to Dedra and two to Cassie. And Nick DeLessi, where do you want to wind up here?
So I actually have the same as Nick. So I gave Cassian number 1 and 2 because I think just the way he was able to adapt to the environment and change. And then I give Bix. Oh, sorry, I said the same as Nick, but I gave Bix episode 3 for uh getting out of that hairy situation and coming through it.
I'm gonna amend one of mine since you guys covered Dedra so well. You two. So I'm gonna switch my Dedra point and give it to Karn because I think Karn's in a good spot at this point of the show. Because I mean, like, he's got a promotion, he's got a girlfriend, now he has a less overbearing mother. But Karn had a good week.
Yeah.
All right, so now go the other way here. So LVPs, 3 each. So Pete, what are you doing?
Lieutenant Asshole for sure. He's getting the LVP. I don't forget his last name, but we're gonna call him that.
So you getting all three of them, or are you giving him one?
He's getting two because he's just so slimy. He's just so disgusting. And then I'm actually giving one to Mon Mothma. I think that Mon Mothma was a lot stronger in season 1 than she appears in season 2. Seems like she keeps blowing off stuff, and I understand it's her daughter's wedding and stuff, but it just seems very like she's too overwhelmed and it's getting the best of her. I just don't think it was as strong as I like. She had a strong performance in the show, but from the Mon Mothma we know on both sides of the timeline, it just seems like she's at her weakest moment right now. So I'm going to give her an LVP.
Fair. I think she's the biggest loser of the week.
Correct. 100%.
Nick Fraietta gave two to Lieutenant Kroll, and he gave one to all the other Star Wars shows. He said the writing on this one is perfect. So every other Star Wars show gets a -1.
I disagree with that sentiment, but
All right, so Nick D, your LVPs.
Yeah, so for episode 1, I
It
I
doesn't.
don't
It's not to be episode specific. You can just do for the whole thing.
Oh, well, I broke it down episode specific, so I'll just read it the way I wrote it down. So I don't know if I could give the entire Rebel group that Cassian met a point.
You, you can. You can just say Yav and 4 dysfunctional rebels.
Okay, because I was thinking that, and if I had to give a specific one, I gave it specifically to Crab because he was the one that shot first and kind of split the whole thing, and he was the one that Andor was like, "Are you dumb?" And yeah, he was dumb, So
Okay, so that's one.
for episode actually, so it's going to be Lieutenant Kroll for 2 and 3 because in 2 I was like, this guy's creepy, and in 3, yeah,
He's a despicable human being.
yeah. And in episode 2 I was like, I don't like this guy. He's being creepy, and then it comes to fruition in 3. So yeah, I give him 2 points.
Yeah, I have to give Lieutenant Kroll train, so he's getting one from me. I'm giving one to Perrin for again being a douche and like basically accusing his wife of cheating on him at their daughter's wedding. Like, I mean, that's a terrible look.
was that really an accusation though? Like it felt like more joking around. Like, oh, is that your lover? Oh, you better let him down gently. Like it didn't seem like he was actually accusing her of it.
That's a very douchey thing to say at your daughter's wedding, though.
You don't know what relationship they got. It seems like they like I'm going to call it the chirp because I'm a hockey guy, but whatever the actual term for it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tay Kama gets one for getting himself killed.
Mm.
Yeah, he played himself, dude. He should have just kept quiet and then used it to his advantage.
Yeah, because he was also not very subtle about all of his like, oh, like we got to talk about the Foundation later. Oh, like the Foundation's going well, but I'm not doing well. Like he kept going over and over and over again, catching Luffy's attention so fast.
Yeah, and he's getting belligerently drunk to the point where everybody was noticing. Like, yeah, he messed up.
I mean, there was the one point, Pete, where like he basically runs over like the guy talking to Luthen to get to Mon Mothma.
Yeah, it was crazy. He was not subtle at all.
All right,
He
so
got himself killed. I mean that's there's no two ways about that.
yep. So next up here, we're gonna grade the episodes here. No explanation here. So let's go one at a time. I'm also at the end of the season. I'm gonna keep track of the arcs. We're gonna see which arc we graded the best as a collective. So so start here. 1 year later, episode one. Nick Fraietta gave it a 9.5. Nick D, your number.
Um, I gave that one an 8. I think it was a strong introduction. Yeah, so I'd say an 8.
I gave it a 9. Pete.
Episode 1, 9.5.
Okay. Episode 2, Sagrona Teema. Nick D'Alessio, your grade.
So I give that one, what did I write down? I wrote a 7.5 because I think it was a little bit of a dip, but it was, it was a good setup episode.
Okay, I gave it an 8. Similar reasons as you, Pete.
9.5.
Yep, Nick also gave it a 9.5. Last grade Harvest, the third episode, I gave that a 9.5. Pete, I think you're lower than me on that.
Yeah, I'm at 8.5 only because of my personal creativeness. Because
Issue.
I'm a director. It's literally that Mon Mothma thing. I think they could have used it for so much more, and that was disappointing. Obviously, still powerful scene. Obviously, still great. 8.5 is still very high. I think that's probably going to be the lowest I go on Andor episodes if this continues for the next, however many episodes we have, 8 left. So yeah,
9 left. Nick
9. Can't do math.
Fraietta gave it a 9.5. Also, sent straight 9.5s across the arc. D'Alessio, your grade now to wrap this.
I gave it a 9. I think it started off good, dipped a little, and then finished strong.
All right, so that's it for the grades. Next up, last thing, Arc 2 predictions. Pete, you can go first here.
Dude, I don't know because we're jumping a year. I personally think that in that year, we probably see that Gorman has been taken over or is in the process of being taken over, where the Dedra's plans being put into place. I think we see the Ferrex crew. I think we finally get to the base. I think we're going to get to the Yavin 4 base or whatever base they're going to be at. And I think Mon Mothma is going to start beefing with Luthen because of something. That it's going to be super hard for me, in my opinion, to like just make a prediction because so much can happen in a year. I don't know.
All right, so Fraietta said, and I quote, no idea. That's what he put down.
Damn.
D'Alessio, what do you think?
Well, so is it definitely it's going to be a year later in this
It is
next arc?
a year later. It's going to be 3 BBY next week.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know if the Gorman massacre happens, but I think it's gonna be building up for sure. I think we're gonna see how that whole thing is gonna, if it doesn't unfold at the end of the arc, it's going to, and then one after that. Um, I really don't know. I think I would like to see the rebellion maybe less chaotic and start to feel like something a little bit more. Like maybe that's where we get our animated cameo or something in that point. But yeah, other than that, I think the good thing about this show is I have no idea. And I think that's the best part about it.
I'm calling a few shots next week. I have a few things here. I think we are definitely getting the Gorman Massacre next week. I think that is definitely happening. I think that's a lock. I think we're going to get the Cassie and Case 2SO meetup. They don't think you can wait too much longer on that. And I also think here we get another meeting. I think we're going to get Cassie and meeting Mon Mothma next week.
Oh, interesting.
May I interject?
Yep.
Spoiler, because it's canon.
Yep.
Gorman Massacre happens in 2 BBY.
Okay.
So we're not getting next arc. We're getting it the arc after.
Oh,
okay.
According to Wikipedia.
Do we see it though? Do we see a flash of it?
I think the whole arc is going to be the Gorman Massacre.
Yeah.
Or mainly the main points of it are going to be. So, I mean, this is not like, I'm not trying to be spoiler, but this is in Wikipedia that the Gorman Massacre occurs in BBY 2.
Well, the Disney shows have changed Wikipedia entries
Right.
before.
So it could 100% happen next arc. But if they're going to keep to what canon or legends have said, maybe they do stick with having that in the third arc rather than the second. But we'll see.
Yep, that's it. So I want to thank you guys for coming on here. We'll be back next week to cover the next arc of Andor here. Nick Fraietta should be having a Senate meeting next week, so he should be back with us here. And As of now, we have another guest lined up here. I'm not going to announce yet, but we do have a potential guest coming next week, Pete.
I'm very excited.
Yes.
Very, very excited.
All right. So, Nick D, thanks for coming in last minute to fill in for the other Nick here. People want to check out your Twitch stuff. How can they do that?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm always down to do this. Yeah, it's twitch.tv/the recovery room. Right now we're playing Baldur's Gate 3 because the patch 8 came out and there's a lot of cool updates with that. So yeah, check it out.
All right. Pete, people want to follow you on social media. How can I do that?
At Consi29 on Twitter, CONSY29, AP Tyler 308. Posted this background on Reddit, so make sure you check them out.
Yep. You can also follow me on social media, mphillips331. It's MPHILIPS331. Also, once again, plug our Sky Guys stuff. Follow Sky Guys podcast on social media if you want to keep up with our content and our clips that are coming out here. We'll be back next week to cover the second arc of Andor, as they're calling it here, Season 2, Chapter 2. But until then, may the Force be with you.